really the mentality that if you really want to keep the lights on, you have to be innovative and have to be able to come up with creative solutions, being able to make smart and sometimes difficult decisions, sometimes timely decisions on how you do things to solve problems and to keep cities operating. Where again, and the book really talks about holding two different ideas in tension until a third idea is basically born. And that's really kind of the mentality that I use here all the time. It's like, it's not either or, it is what else can we do to make things better, to help our residents. Also using AI for on the permitting side to speed up some of the permitting applications that we receive by doing checks through AI. We haven't gone live with that yet, but we are preparing to go live soon.
Welcome to govai.fm, your no-nonsense guide to AI in the public sector. Connect with peers and learn from real successes, failures, and lessons from the trenches.
Welcome to govai.fm. I'm joined today by Bachar Khawajah, the City of Burnaby's Chief Information Officer. Now, Burnaby is my city. It's where I live, where my daughter and I go out in nature. So the work that Bashar's team is doing hits close to home. They are behind some of the most practical AI work in government right now, including Burnaby's wildfire detection system. We are going to get into where AI is genuinely useful in the city, how he chooses what to build, how he keeps it responsible. Bashar, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. We start with a personal journey. We want to know the person behind the role. Can you give a little background of how you came to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my fascination with technology started really at an early age, like many kids in computer gaming. My first computer was a Commodore computer. I purchased that at the time to play games, and then I started learning a basic language to write code and create shapes in a programmatical way. And then I had an opportunity to work on projects actually in my dad's company. My dad ran a construction company, and he hired engineers to write an archiving system. At that time, I believe it was Turbo Pascal. So I started working with them, asking them questions, learning from them, and so on. And kind of my career was set at that time. I wanted to learn computer science, study computer science, and learn programming. So, and then I went to the States to study computer science at the University of Indianapolis. And then after graduation, I worked in Dubai for a few years as a Java developer and then as a PLSQL developer on Oracle. But I always wanted to come back to North America and specifically Canada and just stay closer to the innovation and technology. So I immigrated to Canada in 2006. And since then, I've been working on different projects with different organizations until 2014. I joined the City of Burnaby on a temporary assignment for 1 year to do a project while I was doing my MBA. And after that, I decided to stay. And my career grew here at the city to the point that I became a CIO in 2020. So I've been a CIO at the city now for almost 6 years.
Okay, so one of the things that would help our listeners would be the day-to-day work of a CIO for a city. If you can give a little picture of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a challenging work. The difficulty really is in making choices every day, balancing between budget and demand. We receive a lot of demands from our community, from our apartments and so on. And we have a limited budget. So we have to stretch the budget to try accommodate that demand as much as possible. But just to take a step back, the CIO role here at the city is really about managing and growing technology for the city according to the demand and according to the strategic direction for the city. But the day-to-day really involves making those technology decisions and financial decisions on what to invest in and what projects to lead and what projects to let go of, and and what build you want to do on the infrastructure side and so on. So it's really very involved. It's a very hands-on role. And it's really privileged to be able to work as a CIO for a government organization because it goes beyond just technology. It helps our residents. It helps the people who live around the city. And that's really what keeps us going every day is seeing that happening and seeing how technology basically improves the life of our residents as we improve things here around the city.
I wanted to now get into more of the big picture questions. Maybe we'll start with how do you think about innovation culture? So that is one of the things that is discussed a lot in the technology management these days, especially with AI. You've said it that innovation is a natural part of how the city moves forward. I wanted to know, like for somebody who is focused on technology management and working on projects that are here and now, how do you think of these future state projects or future state use cases that become available through things like AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I must say that innovation doesn't only exist, around in and around technology. I think at Burnaby we have innovations happening in construction projects, in finance, in parks. It's a really culture, right? It's really adopting that mindset and culture. And with that, here within IT, we don't try to innovate. Innovation is kind of part of the daily job of everyone here. So we don't say, for example, we cannot innovate because we want to keep the lights on. Really, the mentality is that if you really want to keep the lights on, you have to be innovative and have to be able to come up with creative solutions, being able to make smart and sometimes difficult decisions, sometimes timely decisions on how you do things to solve problems and to keep cities operation running optimally. So it's really that mindset. And I actually I have a book on my desk. It's called The Opposable Mind by Roger Martin. I read this book over and over again. And the book really talks about holding two different ideas in tension until a third idea is basically born. And that's really kind of the mentality that I use here all the time. It's not either or, it is what else can we do to make things better, to help our residents and to help our standards.
Now, the use cases point of view, with all the hype, I'm sure there is a lot of people who come with a lot of AI use cases, whether it come internally, bottoms up, or whether it comes from external sources who are trying to ping you, balancing between some quick win use cases, which are like here and now again, closer to here and now, versus some bigger bets, while keeping aligned with the city's budgets and strategies. So can you give a picture of how you make that kind of a decision making on what bets to make?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our job is to help the city solve the problems that they are facing. And so technology is an enabler to that. So when someone comes up with an idea, we look at what problem are we trying to solve and what is the value or what's the return on that idea. Select the ideas that brings the maximum benefit to the city and to the residents and to our staff. And basically advance, how we do things, create efficiency, increase speed, reduce cost. So that's really how we prioritize the ideas. There are other kind of work that we do in IT that, kind of part of keeping the lights on, like road mapping, example, and that basically dictates that for certain application or certain project, we have to do a replacement at some time or we have to upgrade and so on. So those happen. But for new ideas, it's really about the value that that idea brings and the problem that it tries to solve. And for me, I always try to keep things in perspective by thinking about governance, ownership, and funding. So if somebody brings an idea to me and I see that we can have a clear governance about it, there is a clear ownership for that idea, and I can get funding for it. It goes on the wish list.
One of the questions I wanted to ask is there is a lot of debate, even in the industry, what is going to be the impact of AI 3 or 5 years down the line, let's see. So some leaders expect it to transform almost everything and transform it fast. Others see it as very powerful, but a bounded tool, great for specific things like coding, drafting, assistance. but not foundationally changing roles and jobs. Where do you land for a municipality?
Yeah, our view, our 3 to 5 years view is really grounded. So we see the base of the technology outside, around the world. Basically, AI is growing extremely fast and extremely powerful, which allows for choice. Right, like if your bottom line as an organization depends on AI adoption and building on AI, you are going to adopt it very quickly and you are going to try and utilize it as much as you can. For us in the government sector in general, we have to pace our adoption with the existing policies, both federal, provincial, and local. And we have to pace ourselves because we have a responsibility to protect our citizens' data, our staff data, and to ensure stable operation for the city overall. So we are working on a number of projects related to AI, but all of them feed into kind of that framework of the safe use of AI and adopting AI responsibly and making sure that we are solving a real problem and it is actually bringing benefits. It is cost efficient and bringing benefits back to the city. The long term view, however, Girish, it's unknown. It's a speculation, but nobody knows. But definitely the technology is maturing very fast. And the interesting thing about AI is that I've never seen any technology in my lifetime that can traverse the different layers of compute in the way AI does. So AI can build upwards to the all the way to the interface, the user interface, and words all the way to the assembly code. So this is unique. This is definitely unique, and it is going to transform the industry overall.
I understand. Yes, I like that. It almost reminds me of our Prime Minister of Canada says, innovation moves at the speed of technology, but adoption moves at the speed of trust. And what you're saying is that building that trust framework in the city, that's what we are going to focus on. And yes, AI is very good, very powerful and everything and understood, but I'm working on that step two of how do you build trust on implementing that technology.
Yeah. Organizations are navigating that. You hear stories about AI being used somewhere and not being announced that it is actually an AI use. And then you put information like this to the public and the public find out because also with the AI adoption, the digital literacy of people in general is increasing. And that's also good news. It makes our job easier when people understand the technology and understand how it should be used, right?
Yeah, totally. Wonderful. Okay, so now I wanted to switch to the next section where maybe we can talk about some of the use cases. I'm sure many in our audience would be very interested in this. So set a stage, can you give us a broad overview of where AI is being used across the city today?
So we have few areas on the end user side. We are using a few AI tools. One of them is Copilot with Microsoft 365 and so on. And this is really helps staff with daily tasks, things like, checking text and writing and automating some of the tasks that they do on a daily basis. So that's been really helpful and successful. And the adoption has been really promising across the city. We're also using AI on the permitting side to speed up some of the permitting applications that we receive by doing checks through. We haven't gone live with that yet, but we are preparing to go live soon. And this is really to help our plan checkers get like an audit report from the tool to flag any discrepancies in the application. And then they do a manual or continue doing a manual review, but it does give you kind of that overview of what's missing in an application first. And that technology has been very promising. We reached like a 90% accuracy on many of the applications that we tested. So that was really interesting project. We also have a project to build a helping agent for our call center. So when a call center agent receives a call, the AI can just step in and help the agent find the information that they need and put those information for them on screen or bring even the relevant script for the call agent to work through. and so on. So that's in the work still not live yet. And internally here in IT, we use some AI tools to help with our infrastructure build. So infrastructure as a code basically, and we use AI to help us speed up some of the builds that we do and test some of the builds that we do.
I was wondering if any of the use cases you have where we can take the journey and go a little deeper into change management, if you hit any gotchas, going into a little detail of the implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we start with a lot of these projects. We started with an exploration stage where, because it's a new technology, you want to learn it really well before you do anything. And so we start with an exploration stage. We define what we need to do and what to use it for. Maybe form a pilot for it and scope that pilot, and then bring in the technology to test it. If the pilot is successful, then look at how we can implement and how we scale. So here at the city, we've through our learning in doing a lot of technology projects and so on, the approach we're taking more recently is not to go large from the get-go. We go small, limited scope. We test everything. It allows us also to think about communication and change management and so on. And then we basically implement. So we bring in the core technology in, we implement it, and then through an agile iterative process, we scale it to our users. And as we scale it, we do improvements. And so this is kind of the process. Change management is essential. It's really very collaborative here across the city. So work with implement change. Communication is very important, and the approach is very people central. We don't see AI as as something that replaces something else. We see it as an enabler. So in the case, for example, of the compliance check tool for permitting, we don't look at it as something that will replace a planner, but it will help the planner speed up the application and find gaps in application so they can quickly go back to the applicant and communicate to them what else they need to do to complete their application quickly.
I love that. So one thing I really loved is the focus on communication and change management with innovation projects in general, and now AI in specific. That is becoming so important. And it can be argued that even big frontier labs would do better at communication and change management. Even they would agree to ask them. So focusing on that is one thing that I really love, the focus that you give on that. And second thing I got from what you were saying is how you're thinking of AI and what you're thinking of AI not as a replacer, but as something that 10x's any role. So in this case, an agent who is looking at those applications and all, it makes that person's role turbocharged, like they can do much better at that role. And that can be also for a 311 agent or anyone else, but that's how you're looking at AI. So that's another perspective that I really loved.
Yeah, just elaborate a little bit more on that point. We also have, it's not completely published right now, but we have an AI adoption framework that ties back to the policies that we have and the AI policy that we have. And part of that is really defining where human interaction needs to be present so that, decisions are not taken from AI directly and put forward. There is actually a human in the middle who actually looking and reviewing. So those safeguards are really important to make sure that we don't run into unnecessary problems while we are actually testing and adopting the technology.
On that lines, AI as a personal tool, separate from the solutions that you built for the city, like a personal productivity tools, which tools across which kind of roles, what kind of experience, like you mentioned M365 Copilot. How is that working out for the city?
Yeah, the adoption has been fantastic, and we get regular stats from our platform about the usage and about the efficiency and savings that really comes from that. So the last stat I looked at is that people are using Copilot and in combination with Teams and so on, are saving on average 2 weeks per year. of their time. So that's a really good chunk of time saved by every single employee. And that time really goes into doing other things that are important. So there's definitely a clear benefit, and we're seeing that from the demand that we have as well.
Totally. And it will just compound as it can connect to other things for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of use cases, like what next? Like, is there something on the horizon that you want to share that is especially exciting in terms of what AI can do, or just directionally, what places are you thinking of where AI can do some really good work?
Yeah, there are a few areas actually. So we are in the process of building our data lake. And I'm really looking forward to building basically specific AI use cases on top of that, that will help us mine the data and find patterns that will allow us to help the decision making across the city. The other interesting use case we're looking at is how AI can help our help desk and computer architecture team in automating some of the tasks that they do. So that's also a project we're just starting to look at and building a business case for it. And we're also looking at expanding the use of AI within our core infrastructure build. And speak to the exact detail of how, but the team is looking into how we can actually it's all within the framework of automating tasks and making sure that we look at things from an efficiency point of view. So our staff are able to do the work that they need to do gracefully. And the last part is on the we're exploring in terms of you know looking through certain use cases around security information and how we can, it's like fighting fire with fire, when AI is being used for attack, and the use of AI is increasing on that front. So we're make sure that the city is safe and secure from that kind of thing.
That the last one is a good call out, especially with the news of Mythos and the different types of exploits that AI can do, like the advanced AI can do. We have to use AI to protect ourselves. So fighting fire with fire, what you're saying, and it has once in the coming days, it's going to be indispensable. Like everybody will have to use AI for security. So glad to hear that you're thinking on the same lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the vendors are building a lot around that as well.
Okay, so next segment, talk more about the risk and the governance. So first thing is, let's talk risks. Like, what are the AI risks that keep you up at night, and what are the potential solutions that you have in mind, just at a broader level before we go into a detailed discussion?
I think it's not specifically to AI, but data and protecting city data and residents data has always been very important. But AI brings a new type of exposure to that data, and really protecting the data has become really much more important. So having the guardrails put in place to make sure that only approved AI tools are being used across the city, where we have control over, what's being used, and we know that data is protected. The data is held, within the import, like within our Canadian environment, and no confidential data is being used with AI. So I think that's really the top thing. The other thing is really, as I say, security and just being able to really cope up with all the new type of advancement in the security area and protection. So these are really the two main.
Talk two things on your mind. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now let's come to the governance process. You mentioned a little bit about it in terms of your AI policy, but maybe you can walk us through what is the process of governing AI projects.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said, on the security side is really only using the AI tools that we have looked at and tested. There is kind kind of an AI tool dump in the market that's happening, where a lot of cheaper AI tools are being put out there, and without really properly looking at those tools and testing those tools, it is really dangerous to use them. That's why we took this approach to only allow approved AI tools to be used. And honestly, like there is not much, like not much benefit from using those cheaper AI tools if you have a good tool like Copilot or Gemini or Claude. So that's part of it. For projects and new ideas related to AI is really building the business case. And so that's step one, looking at the problems that's being solved. And as I mentioned before, looking at how we're going to govern it, how we're going to own it, because like the governance is not just related to the tool itself, it's related to the data. And the data, the tool, because the tool is useless without the data. So what data the tool to use, what data is going to go into that, right? And then how we're going to manage and maintain those, we call them agents, right? Those the AI agents and so on. So so to make sure that they are used properly and so on. And sometimes we approve AI agents to be deployed, and then we monitor their usage. And if they are not really being used effectively, we take them out, because if they remain there and they are not being used, I can see that being a risk in general. So we only want to keep, and the management of them is just going to be really difficult, having so many agents to manage and to maintain and so on. So we have this kind of regular process of looking at those agents and just making sure that we only keep effectively what's being used, what's being really adopted and used.
But personal AI tools, last year there was a paper from MIT which talked about many things, but one of the things it talked about was shadow IT or shadow AI use, which is people using AI tools which are not approved and not sanctioned, like ChatGPT or Claude or whatnot, for work, like office work. Have you come across those kind of challenges, and how do you put guardrails in to balance letting people use the powerful tools, but at the same time keeping your data safe?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really had any major issues so far. And I think because we were early in embracing the technology and adopting the technology and making it available to our staff. So our staff did not have to go, outside of the regular parameters of the city allowed tools to do things, right? I think the other part is really education. And we are working on an education program currently related to AI for all the staff, right? But we've been very, diligent in holding what we call tech talks within the organization here, where we bring like IT staff or some expert to talk about these tools, to talk about AI, to talk about security and so on, and educate staff as much as possible. But as I said, like we're still working on making sure that we have visibility on everything. I wouldn't say that we have visibility on everything. We have thousands of employees. But we haven't really, from the monitoring that we've done, we haven't really run any.
Looks like then, based on what you said, there's like almost like a four-pronged approach. So one is you have the policy which clearly states what is and is not allowed. Second is you are putting in guardrails and monitoring that you're speaking about on what people are doing, but not just keeping it at a policy and monitoring side, but take it to education, which is people need to know what are the risks and why are we doing what we are doing, not just you have to do this. And I think the fourth thing that you said is very insightful too, that if you don't adopt these AI tools early and people go home and they are using ChatGPT and Claude and work is doing great, but in the office you cannot do that. And when that stays for too long, then that tension grows. So even for a city to keep looking at, are there AI tools that are approved and ready for use, and adopting them at the right time is also important. So that totally makes sense.
And we reach out to our staff and we try to hear from them regularly about what their needs are and so on. And so we try to get ahead of that as much as we can.
Perfect. Great. Okay. So We are coming to the last segment here, but before we wrap, if there are other CIOs of other cities or other public sector entities or otherwise who are starting to adopt AI and they are new to it, getting M365 and whatnot, do you have any general advice?
I mean, my general advice will be to make sure that you have the adoption framework and policy in place before you start bringing in the tools, especially if you are looking at a wider adoption across the organization. I think that's the most important thing, because you do want to move with steady steps, and sometimes the vendor enables certain functions in these tools that may not align with your policy. So if you don't have the policy, you don't know what to stop using versus what to enable and continue using. So you wanna have that in place. That's really my my main advice. I think personally, be curious and learn the technology as much as you can. Don't treat it as something that's gonna come and go. It is something that's gonna be here for a long time. So it is foundational. It is going to be foundational. So treat it that way.
Okay. Now, emerging tech outlook, your outlook towards all the new technologies and use cases that are coming along. Which technologies are you thinking are the most promising?
I think, like, in the immediate term, the AI agents are going to be really more commonly used, and they're going to get even more powerful, more diverse. And I think it's very similar to how we saw the software industry grow at some point. Smaller software, software was kind of being built in every industry in different sizes, different forms, and so on. And then it consolidated at some point. And what emerged is, the kind of a large enterprise software and mid-market and small market. I think with AI, we're going to see something similar. Now, a lot of people have access to the technology. They can build agents. They're going to come up with new ideas and so on. And over time, these ideas are going to mature and consolidate.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be in the immediate term. I think in the longer term is physical AI is going to drive a lot of the growth, and even is going to drive the direction of the agents as well. The building of the agents. So robotics and physical AI is going to become more important than the agents that run on your machine.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Great. Okay. So the last round is a fun lightning round to ask you some fun questions. So the first one was an AI buzzword you would gladly retire, if any.
I think treating AI as a disruptor, like, you know what I mean? Like, call it a disruptor. I believe it is mainstream, and it is gonna be mainstream. A lot of these software organizations are rebuilding their software. I mean, now some of them, the ones who cannot rebuild their software on an AI from ground up, they are actually integrating AI into their software. But at some point, they're gonna, if they want to be in business, if they want to continue, they're going to rebuild their software on AI from the ground up. So it is not a disruptor. It is really a new computing platform. And it is a mainstream technology.
A favorite AI use case you have come across, even outside your work or public sector?
I think anywhere where AI could save lives, I would say that would be a good use case. I think the last one I heard about was using AI in X-ray machines. So instead of having someone kind of do the X-ray manually for you and get exposure to radiation, AI can actually do it for you. So I think this is maybe one of the best use cases I've seen so far.
AI to save lives makes sense. Any books, papers, podcasts, other sources that shaped your thinking about AI and innovation?
I watch a lot of stuff online on YouTube. I follow a lot of podcasts. Whenever there is a major technology event, so like there is nothing specific I can name that kind of fit my view, but I try and keep up with everything that's happening in the market. All the new technology from the hyperscalers, all the new ideas and so on. And I think that keeps you really, keeps your thinking fresh about what's happening, and allows you to to compare what you're doing versus what these larger organizations are doing, and understand how to adopt the technology and how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bashar goes home and is using his own laptop. What tool do you reach out to personally, and how do you use it
My personal tool at home or at work?
at home?
At home, I use Gemini a lot. I like the balance in Gemini. It's not as powerful as Claude, in my opinion, but it's I like the balance, and I like the complementary tools that comes with Gemini.
Thank you very much for this discussion. And on a personal note, thank you very much for the wonderful work that you're doing with the city.
Thank you for having me.
This was govai.fm. Connect with us on LinkedIn, suggest a guest, and stay tuned for real stories from AI in action.